Now, this is going to be a big one because if you took the things in my soul that make up who I am, Eric, I guarantee you that three of those things, one would be theater, the second thing would be puppets, and the third thing would be trains. So when you're giving me a theatrical puppet show based on trains, baby, you got a stew going. Hi, my name is Eric. Thanks for coming back to the channel. And if it is your first time here, hello. I am a YouTube creator who reviews theater, theme parks, and immersive events in Los Angeles. And I am very, very excited today because I'm going to come at you with all of my thoughts and opinions and excitement that I have for the Choo Choo Revue at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater. Now, first things first, when I say Bob Baker, you're probably thinking of the Price is Right guy. I need to tell you, that is wrong. That is Bob Barker. He wants you to get your pets neutered. Bob Baker wants you to love puppets. Specifically, he wants you to love marionettes. What is a marionette? Well, I have an example right here because of course I do. Hello, everybody. This is Bobo. What's that, Bobo? You're really excited to be in my video today? You want to know if I'm free next Friday? To take me to an Italian dinner? Of course you are. We all know Puppet's favorite noodle is spaghetti. 'Cause of the strings? Anyway, yes, just a few weeks ago, the Bob Baker Marionette Theater in Highland Park opened their very first all-new original brand new show in 40 years called the Choo Choo Revue. Now, if you're hearing about the Bob Baker Marionette Theater for the very first time right here, I hate to say, have you been living under a rock, but oh my God, have you been living under a rock? Especially if you live in Los Angeles. This is one of LA's major legacy theaters. You know, you think of big theaters like the Pantages, you think of Center Theater Group, you think of the Pasadena Playhouse, but the Bob Baker Marionette Theater has been around just as long as some of these major LA theater institutions, and I would say that the star of the Bob Baker Marionette Theater only has continued to rise, especially in the last 5 years. Especially if you recently saw their Coachella performance, where their performance of Ben Platt's cover of Diet Pepsi had a bit of a viral moment. You may have also heard about Bob Baker Day, a huge, massive one-day puppet festival that happens every year near LA's Chinatown. You might also see these puppets performing at LA County Fair or sometimes at Knott's Berry Farm. These puppets get around. And I think that just speaks to the everlasting, timeless quality of this theater and the work that was created by its founder, Bob Baker, back in 1963 when the theater opened. They used to operate out of a downtown theater in Los Angeles, but back in 2019, they moved into their new home on York Boulevard in Highland Park, where they are in LA to stay. At least they hope to be, if they can raise the $5 million that they are currently trying to raise to flat out buy their building so they can make this Highland Park Theater their forever home. And I really do want to hammer home the timeless quality of the Bob Baker Marionette Theater. They have been entertaining literally generations now. There are people who've lived in Los Angeles who have grown up with them their whole lives, and there are children who are only just now discovering the Marionette Theater for the first time. And there is just something that is ephemeral and magical and soul-bearing about puppets. Maybe that's just me. As a person on the autism spectrum, are you surprised? My love of puppets goes back to The Muppets, Sesame Street, all of those classic shows. I myself used to perform in a puppet theater troupe back in college, so this company means a lot to me. And as RuPaul once said, everybody loves puppets. Now, unlike the Muppets, the puppets at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater are string puppets. They are held up by strings. And while marionettes are not personally my favorite kind of puppet performance, I'm a big fan of Muppet-style puppetry. I also like shadow puppetry. I also like bunraku. I need to stop myself now. But I want to assure you, these are not creepy puppets. We're not talking about the scary ventriloquism dummy from the Goosebumps books. I'm not talking about that scary toy-haunted puppet marionette train car from the Polar Express. No. These puppets are really cute, actually. They are very cartoony. Think of, if you're familiar with Mary Blair, the Disney artist who designed It's a Small World. She's also the art director behind Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. Think about very pastel-colored shapes and anthropomorphic animals, or you could say talking windmills, or a flirty pink kitty, or a birthday dog with a party hat on his head. There is such an immediately identifiable style that the Bob Baker Marionette Theater has that I think separates it from the kind of puppets you probably think of when you hear marionettes. We're not talking about the high on the hill lonely girl goat herder from The Sound of Music. I'm talking about these puppets that are pretty massive. A lot of them range from like 3 to 4 feet tall. And while this Marionette Theater has a collection of over 1,000 puppets that were created and designed by its founder, Bob Baker, the show that I'm talking about today features over 100 brand new, all-new designed puppets for their very first all-new original show in 40 years, the Choo Choo Revue, a show about trains. Do I even need to say that I liked this? That I recommend this experience? You're telling me that for the price of one ticket, I can spend an hour going on a fantastical, magical, dreamlike train ride review show across a fantasy version of the American landscape? And you think that I'm gonna get on here and tell you that you should not go to this show? Because I'm telling you that you should go to this show. So for the past few decades, the Marionette Theater has not been developing brand new shows. Bob Baker passed away in 2014, and they have really focused on doing remounts of his original puppet shows. These are 45 to 50-minute shows that are generally featuring songs that are very kitschy, that are very much centered in like this campy 70s, 60s, like American songbook classics. Think Golden Age musicals, or silly little bluegrass songs, or Diana Ross disco numbers, and then get very cute, fun puppets to get up on stage and essentially lip sync. This is essentially puppetry but drag. Get these puppets on stage and lip sync these intricate numbers across this giant red carpeted playing space, every show featuring a cast of at least 5 actors who are playing multiple different puppet parts, who are moving set pieces on and off stage, and who are sometimes, but very rarely, bringing voices themselves to these puppets live in the space. These are shows that take a lot of work and a lot of handcrafted dedication to put on, so it makes sense that they have not been able, with the shoestring or puppet string budget, you could say, with which most theaters, especially nonprofit theaters in LA, operate under, that they haven't had necessarily the budget or the time or the ability to put on a brand new show. However, that has changed because now we have the Choo Choo Revue. So under the leadership of co-executive director and artistic director Alex Evans, we have this new show featuring a rotating cast of over 21 puppeteers who are bringing these puppets that have been designed by the head puppet designer and builder, Karina De La Cruz. We have this brand new, fantastic, ephemeral, magical, dream-like show that will hopefully be added into the rotating canon of iconic classic Bob Baker Marionette Theater shows. But the question I have is, can this new show, the first one designed and produced without the show's founding artistic leader, Bob Baker, can this show live up to the quality of these past shows that they have been performing for the last few decades? Well, that's what I'm going to tell you about in this review. Here we go. So I want to start by saying that, like, no matter preconceived notions aside, no matter what, this show is a feat of artistic brilliance. This is a one-of-one theater puppet company. They are the oldest operating theater puppetry company in the United States. So the mere fact that this show is even being produced at all and at this scale is so impressive. The Bob Baker Marionette Theater is such an exemplary example of analog art in the theatrical space. There is absolutely no AI involved in the creation of any of their shows. There's hardly even any automation at their theater. One of the things that I love about the Marionette Theater is that from the moment you walk into the theater in Highland Park, you are essentially being transported back in time to a pre-cell phone, pre-computer, pre-AI era of theatrical artwork. You come inside and immediately you are greeted by these large pastel panels featuring all of these retro vintage designed posters. You look at the floor tiles and it's this green linoleum tile with all of these beautiful Mary Blair-esque white daisy flowers inlaid on the floor. It feels almost like you're going to a circus with this like lattice wall decoration. You enter through the lobby and into the theater and it's like you're stepping into the mouth of a puppet, because from the ceiling you have all of these dangling, glittering diamond cardboard cutouts. There's this large, grand playing space. It is this red carpeted floor. You have the big red curtain. You also have an organ player who is playing vintage classics, sometimes Disney songs, sometimes just classic like anthems from the pre-90s, pre-80s era. If you've ever seen that crazy video of that guy from that Huell Hauser episode playing that piano and tugging on those strings to make all these like circusy piano noises, it kind of feels like that on steroids when you come to BBMT. And as soon as the show starts, you have one of the puppeteers in the show come out, and every member of the cast in these shows are decked out in red, for red shirt or red skirt or pants, and then red shoes, so that they can sort of blend into the red curtain and red carpet of the playing space. And this performer will come out and give some general rules about the show. No talking, no texting. Photos and videos are allowed, so you're going to see some video clips that I took during the show in this review. However, no, basically the basic don't be a jerk rule. However, they also explain that like at certain points in the show, the puppets may come out and greet you. Very often when you come to the theater, you will have puppets that will come up and sit in your laps that may give you a little kiss on the cheek. And that is because alongside the general like fold out theater seating, there's also a large portion of seating on the show that is crisscross applesauce on the floor seating. That is usually for children who maybe can't sit still in a chair for the entire length of an hour-long show. I have sat on the floor before, and let me tell you, my 30-year-old back doesn't love sitting on the floor. However, that is the best seat you can have if you want to get as close to these puppets as possible, which I do recommend because these guys are friendly. And then the pre-show speech ends with, of course, the most important rule of all: please have fun. And that, dear viewer, is what I did when the Choo Choo Revue started. And I'm sitting there in the dark as the show's getting started wondering, as a brand new show at a theater that is very much about vintage aesthetic and very much about its historic legacy, will they be able to take a show and bring it into the modern era while still keeping that old time feel? And I like to think of these puppet shows at the Marionette Theater as something akin to having a dream. These aren't very plot-heavy shows. These are essentially cabarets, or in this case, a review of different numbers featuring puppets that are anthropomorphized animals, anthropomorphized windmills, anthropomorphized electric poles, or just big old rolling balls of moss with arms and legs and eyes on them. These are things that do not exist in our reality, that can only exist in dreams, that can only be brought to life by artists who are able to take their dreams and bring them into the physical space. And the first dreamlike character that we meet is our conductor. This man with a clock face, a conductor hat, and a sprig in his step and a glint in his clockwork eyes.
Oh, though it's just a simple little thing, there's something about it makes you wanna sing.
And so what we see as the conductor is explaining the journey we're about to go on is a train attached to these marionette strings that gets brought onto the stage, and it travels through the thrust space staging of the theater. It goes around the audience with a tiny little train car on the back, and as the show goes on, this train will keep on returning onto the stage with more and more train cars attached to the back of it that are decorated like the different scenes that we are about to see in sequence through this show. For example, one of the first numbers that we get is the Mushroom Forest number, where you have all of these little mushrooms that are very Mario-like, very much like red caps and white dots, and they have these little dancing feet, and there's all this moss, and there's all these forest backdrops that are being brought onto the stage. We also have this Alpine Mountain number, where you have these skiing fir Christmas trees that are coming onto the stage and are being dragged along the stage by the marionette puppeteers like they are skiing across the mountains through this very whimsical Matterhorn-esque song number. every number is featuring and showcasing a different beautiful element of the American West or the American East, the Appalachian Mountains, the Grand Canyon, the desert, the caves, all of these things that make up the natural splendor that are being brought to life with these different puppets. One of the most technically impressive puppets in the show is a pelican who opens its mouth and a fish comes out, and the fish starts singing in a very mechanical Billy Bass-like style. And then that fish opens its mouth, and then a little bug pops out of its mouth, and then that bug is singing. So you have a puppet inside of a puppet inside of another puppet that is being operated by a puppeteer. And I like this sort of Avenue Q style approach to the puppetry at the Marionette Theater, where the puppeteers are not being hidden behind any backdrop. There is no element of trying to mask them or make you believe that these puppets are operating independently of an operator. The puppeteers are there on stage. They are part of the show. They're not necessarily engaging with their own facial expression or their own acting performance. A lot of their work is being directly at these puppets, making sure that they are operating the way that they are meant to. But I like that the Bob Baker Marionette both tries to whisk you off to this magical world while not trying to deny that there is an inherent artifice to the act of puppetry. And I could go on for another hour at least giving you a play-by-play of every moment of this show, but I'm not, because I want to leave some surprises in there for you. But I do want to finish off with one thing that I do think exemplifies what is so fantastic about this new production. My favorite number in the show is the Mr. Cellophane number, where Bigfoot, a brand new giant, probably 3 to 4 foot size puppet construction of Bigfoot, comes out and sings Mr. Cellophane from Chicago, and his fur is lined with all of these beautiful strings of tinsel, making him just this shining, exuberant, beautiful constructed puppet that feels like something that could have only existed in this current time. It feels like the perfect example of a puppet that is so quintessentially Bob Baker, but could have only been constructed and used in a show happening right now in the modern era. And I think that there are many other moments in the show, like using an LED wall as a sort of train-like backdrop that gives this sort of speeding futuristic sense of the future. Not only when it comes to the future of trains and transit, but the future of this theater. This show has such a fantastic mix of the now and the then in a way that I just feel like is so deeply heartwarming and deeply authentic to the history and the culture of the Marionette Theater. And that little Bigfoot puppet sure can shimmy and dance. And I could shimmy and dance for much longer on this camera telling you about this show, but I think I'm gonna leave it there. Absolutely, please, you have until August. Go and see the Choo Choo Revue at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater. It runs until August 30th, and shows are Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays with the off Wednesday matinee, like the one that I went to. Tickets start at $28. You can sit in the seats or you can sit on the floor. They also have sensory-friendly performances. The next one of those is going to be on August 1st. They also have an ASL interpreted show near the end of July. And if you go, please let me know what your favorite marionette puppet is. What's your favorite show that you've seen at Bob Baker Marionette? Have you been to any other event where they've appeared? Later in September, we're going to have Bob Baker Day at LA State Historic Park after it got canceled back in April earlier this year. And please, run, don't walk, add this to your calendar. The tickets are selling out for this show. And if you got to see it, let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me for another video review. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my thoughts and opinions on the things happening around Los Angeles. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.